Stand in the back of almost any church on a Sunday morning and you will hear the hum. We are going to uncover the hidden economic, political, and spiritual context behind the words and see what they actually demanded from the people who heard them first. It literally translates as the bread of the coming day. Give us today the bread of tomorrow. That specific phrasing forces the mind backward, straight into the Sinai desert. It is an exact echo of the Exodus. When the Israelites were starving in the wilderness, God provided manna. But there was a strict structural rule. You could only gather exactly enough for one day. If you panicked and tried to hoard it, it rotted by morning. It was an enforced daily discipline of trust. In the Roman world, security meant silos. It meant stockpiling surplus, hoarding land, and starving your neighbor to ensure your own wealth. Jesus is building a counter-community. He is teaching displaced farmers and marginalized laborers to ask for enough calories to survive the next 24 hours and to trust that tomorrow's bread will be there tomorrow. And because the prayer begins with the word "our," it contains an automatic ethical demand. Give us. To do that, you have to realize we actually have two versions of this prayer. You cannot pray this line with integrity while your pantry is overflowing and the family in the next house is starving. The prayer organizes an alternative economy based on shared survival. But bread is only half the crisis of poverty. Because when you do not have bread, you have to borrow, and that leads directly to the most controversial line in the entire text. Forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. In modern English, we have almost entirely removed the money from this sentence. We hear the word debt and automatically translate it into sin. We think of a moral ledger. We treat it as a plea to clear our conscience of guilt, anger, or relational friction. But if you were a peasant in first-century Galilee, debt was not a metaphor. The one most people memorize comes from the Gospel of Matthew, right in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount. Debt was a weapon. To understand how this line functioned, you have to look closely at the Greek text, because Matthew and Luke translate Jesus' Aramaic slightly differently. Matthew uses the word ophilema. It is a stark, literal commercial term. It means a financial obligation, a loan that must be repaid. Luke, writing later for a broader Greco-Roman audience, adjusts the first half of the sentence. Forgive us our sins, hamartia. He knows his Gentile readers do not naturally equate financial debt with moral failure the way Jewish speakers did, but look at how Luke finishes the exact same sentence. Jesus is speaking to crowds of day laborers, farmers, and the chronically sick. For we ourselves forgive everyone indebted to us. Even Luke cannot remove the economics. In the agrarian economy of the Roman provinces, a bad harvest meant you could not pay your taxes. To survive, you borrowed from the wealthy elites in the cities. The interest rates were predatory. When you inevitably defaulted, the machinery of foreclosure engaged. First, you lost your ancestral land. Then you sold your labor. Finally, if the ledger was still unbalanced, you sold your children into debt slavery. These are people completely marginalized by the religious establishment in Jerusalem. Debt was the mechanism that crushed the poor and concentrated wealth in the hands of the few. So when Jesus tells a crowd of marginalized laborers to pray for the forgiveness of debts, he is invoking the deepest, most radical economic memory in the Jewish scriptures, the Jubilee. According to Leviticus 25, every 50 years, Israel was supposed to hit a total economic reset button. All debts were cancelled, all slaves were freed, all foreclosed land was returned to its original family. The Jubilee was designed to prevent the permanent creation of a poverty class. It was God's built-in defense against systemic greed. But by the 1st century, the wealthy elite had found legal loopholes to avoid it, and simultaneously crushed by the tax engines of the Roman Empire. The reset was not happening. Jesus is taking the macro vision of the Jubilee and shrinking it down to a daily community practice. He is essentially saying, the kingdom of heaven does not run on predatory ledgers. If you want God to cancel the massive, unpayable moral debt you owe to him, you have to tear up the literal physical promissory notes you are holding over your neighbor's head. Notice the structure of the petition. It is the only line in the entire prayer with a condition attached, as we also have forgiven. It is a terrifying piece of grammar. It means the community is asking God to use their own behavior as the standard for his mercy. Jesus warns them not to pray like the hypocrites who want to be seen, or like the pagans who babble, thinking they can manipulate the gods with long speeches. If you pray this prayer while actively choking your neighbor for a few pieces of silver, you are asking God to hold your own sins against you. The spiritual and the material are locked together. You cannot hoard grace. This prayer builds a community that survives by feeding each other and forgiving each other. But survival in a hostile empire eventually forces a confrontation, which is why the prayer immediately turns toward the dark. And lead us not into temptation. In the modern, comfortable world, we have reduced this line to a plea for minor behavioral management. We hear the word temptation, and we think of a diet. We think of a momentary lapse in judgment, a petty argument we want to avoid, or a bad habit we are trying to break. He gives them a prayer of stark, radical simplicity. We treat it like a request for a little extra willpower. But Jesus is not teaching his disciples how to manage their impulses. He is preparing them for a collision. The Greek word here is perasmos, and to translate it as temptation is almost entirely too weak. Perasmos does not mean a gentle psychological lure toward a bad decision. It means an ordeal, a trial, a structural test designed to find out exactly where a thing breaks. In the ancient world, it was the word you used for putting metal into a furnace to see if it would melt. To understand what Jesus is actually asking, you have to look at the apocalyptic worldview of first-century Judaism. The Jewish people believed that when God finally intervened in history to establish his kingdom, the transition would not be peaceful. The current ruling powers, the spiritual forces of darkness and human empires like Rome, would not simply hand over the keys. But the Gospel of Luke places the prayer in a completely different setting. They would thrash, they would strike out. The period right before the kingdom arrived was expected to be a time of unparalleled suffering, violence, and persecution. The rabbis called it the birth pangs of the Messiah, a time of testing so severe it would crack the world open. That is the perasmos, the great ordeal. So when this peasant community stands in the shadow of the Roman war machine and prays, "Lead us not into the perasmos," they are not asking God to keep them from stealing a piece of fruit. They are looking at the horizon. They know that claiming allegiance to a new king is going to draw the attention of the empire. They know what Rome does to dissidents. They know the crack of the whip and the wood of the cross. This line is a stark, deeply human admission of fragility. It is a community saying to God, "We know the kingdom is coming." In Luke chapter 11, Jesus is on the road to Jerusalem. He finishes praying alone. We know the empire will fight back. But please do not march us into the meat grinder. Do not subject us to the final crushing test. Because they know the truth about themselves. If God puts them in the furnace, if the swords come out and the interrogations begin, they might break. They might betray their convictions. They might betray each other. It is the exact same word Jesus will use years later. On the night before his execution, sweating in the dirt of Gethsemane, he will look at his exhausted friends and tell them to pray that they do not enter into the perasmos. He knew what the test looked like. He knew exactly what it cost. The prayer asks to be spared the breaking point. Dozens, sometimes hundreds of voices dropping together into a low, rhythmic drone. The words bleed into a single, continuous breath. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And one of his disciples walks up and makes a very specific request. Lord, teach us to pray, just as John taught his disciples. But if the test cannot be avoided, it demands a rescue. But deliver us from the evil one. Look at the traditional English translation that most of us grew up reciting. Deliver us from evil. That missing word changes everything. By dropping the article, we turn a localized active enemy into a philosophical concept. We treat evil as a generalized atmospheric condition, a bad mood, a vague tendency towards selfishness that we want God to help us avoid. The Greek text of Matthew does not deal in abstractions. The phrase is apo tou poneru. It carries a definite article. It is not just evil, it is the evil. And in the grammatical and cultural context of the first century, it points to a personified adversary, the evil one. To understand the weight of this, you have to realize that the first century Jewish mind did not divide the world into neat, spiritual and political categories. They did not believe that demons stayed in the spiritual realm while humans handled the government. They believed the two were entirely meshed. Notice what is happening there. In the ancient Jewish world, a rabbi's prayer was his signature. It was a compact summary of his entire theology. When they looked at the world, they saw two regimes at war, the kingdom of God and the kingdom of the adversary. The evil one was not a cartoon figure with a pitchfork. He was the architect of the present darkness. Where did this community see him? They saw his work in the structural violence of the empire. They saw him in the Herodian kings murdering dissidents. They saw him in the predatory debt machinery crushing the poor, and in the religious elite collaborating with pagan rulers to keep their power. Behind the Iron of Rome, there was a spiritual architect bent on destroying God's creation. And the verb Jesus uses to respond to this threat is intense. Ruomai. Deliver sounds like a polite postal transaction, but ruomai means to snatch, to tear away from danger, to violently extract. It is the word you use when a soldier drags a wounded man out of a burning building. When John the Baptist taught his disciples how to pray, he was giving them a badge of identity. He was giving them a way to recognize each other in the dark. Or when a shepherd pulls a sheep from the jaws of a predator. The community has just prayed not to be led into the great ordeal. Now, looking at the crushing machinery of the world around them, they make their final plea. They are declaring that they cannot save themselves. No amount of private morality, careful planning, or perfect theology can stop a Roman crucifixion squad or a spiritual assault. They need a rescuer who is stronger than the occupying forces. They are asking the true Father in heaven to snatch them out of the teeth of the false ruler on earth. Put the pieces back together. When you reassemble the words in their original setting, the Lord's Prayer ceases to be a safe, spiritualized poem. It is a pledge of allegiance to a rival government. You are asking God to vindicate his reputation by bringing his regime to the dirt of the present world. So when Jesus' disciples ask for their own prayer, they are not asking for a lesson in personal devotion. They are asking for a community identifier. They are asking, what defines us? What is the absolute center of this movement? You are asking for exactly enough calories for the people next to you to survive until tomorrow. You are explicitly telling the creator of the universe to judge your soul by the exact standard you use to cancel the financial and moral debts of your neighbors. And you are begging to be snatched out of the teeth of a system engineered to break you. This prayer leaves no room for modern, individualized religion. You cannot pray it while hoarding surplus. You cannot pray it while leveraging power over an enemy. It forces the spiritual directly into the material. It binds your survival to the survival of the community. Stand in the back of a church this Sunday. Listen to the hum of the congregation, the rote, unified drone. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. If we actually understood the danger in those syllables, the words would not drone, they would crackle. We would not recite them as a religious lullaby. We would pray them like a declaration of war against the empire of the self. Because to speak these words with your eyes open is to look at a world obsessed with stockpiling wealth, dominated by unforgiven debt and fractured by isolation, and declare that the current arrangement of human power is over. Jesus answers with a prayer so dense with meaning that it takes less than 30 seconds to speak. It is not just a request, it is a decision about which kingdom you belong to. If uncovering this historical context changed how you read the text, the biggest thing you can do is subscribe, leave a comment, and share this video with someone who needs it. That is genuinely how people find this content. We depend on you to spread the word. Please keep us in your prayers. God bless you. But it contains the blueprint for surviving an empire. And it starts not with the individual, but with a collective claim. The very first word of the prayer dismantles how most modern people approach God. Our, not my. When Jesus teaches his followers to pray, he removes the isolated individual from the equation completely. It is the most widely spoken piece of text in human history. You cannot pray this prayer alone. The grammar forbids it. Even if you are standing by yourself in a quiet room, the moment you say our, you are tethering yourself to a community. You are declaring that your survival is bound to the survival of the people next to you. Our Father in heaven. We hear the word Father, and we immediately think of domestic warmth, a dad, a safe, comforting presence. But that is not how the word functioned in the ancient world. In the Roman Empire, a father, the paterfamilias, was a legal and economic absolute. He held the power of life and death over a household. In the Jewish scriptures, calling God Father meant something specific. It meant claiming to be the heir of the Exodus. It was a claim of belonging to a covenant, a distinct family line. And placing that father in heaven did something subversive. It immediately demoted every father on earth. It meant Caesar was not the ultimate authority. And because it is so familiar, it has lost its teeth. The Herodian kings were not the ultimate authority. The allegiance of the community belonged somewhere else. Then comes the first actual petition. Hallowed be your name. It sounds like Old English poetry, an antique way of saying, let people think you are holy. But Jesus is not inventing a new poetic phrase here. He is tapping into the deepest, oldest rhythm of Jewish liturgy. If you walked into a synagogue in the 1st century, you would hear a prayer called the Kaddish. Its opening lines are almost identical. Magnified and sanctified be his great name in the world which he has created. Jesus is anchoring his movement right in the center of Jewish hope. But what does it actually mean for God's name to be hallowed? We tend to read it as a worship lyric, a statement of personal reverence. We treat this prayer as a safe, private meditation, a gentle spiritual template to center the mind, a quiet way to feel close to God before going to sleep. That is not what a 1st century Jew meant. In the biblical world, a name is not just a label, it is reputation, it is character. And for centuries, Israel had been conquered, exiled, and crushed. First by Babylon, then Persia, then Greece, and now Rome. The prophets, specifically Ezekiel, argued that because God's people were oppressed and scattered, God's name was being mocked among the nations. The surrounding empires looked at the bleeding province of Judea and concluded that their God was weak. So praying, "Hallowed be your name," is not a polite compliment. It is a desperate, prophetic plea for action. It is a community looking around at Roman military occupation, corrupt religious leaders, and grinding poverty, and saying to God, "Vindicate your reputation. Step in. Show the world who you actually are." It is a demand for God to move in history, and that demand sets up the most explosive line in the entire prayer. "Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven." We say it smoothly. We have completely spiritualized the concept. But that is completely backward to how it first sounded. Jesus was not handing out a spiritualized lullaby. He was handing his followers a manifesto. When modern readers hear the word kingdom, they almost instinctively think of a physical place, a destination, a golden city waiting on the other side of death. They hear a prayer about getting off the earth. But that is not what the Greek word basileia means, and it is certainly not what a first-century Galilean meant. Basileia is not a piece of real estate. It is an action. It is the active exercise of royal power. It means reign. It means administration. It means regime. When you pray, "Your kingdom come," you are not asking God to take you away to heaven. You are asking God to bring heaven's administration here, to this dirt, to this occupied territory. Feel the weight of that in the first century. You are standing in a land governed by Roman prefects and Herodian puppet kings. You are walking past garrisoned soldiers carrying standards that declare Caesar the divine savior of the world. The tax engines of the empire are designed to strip wealth from the provinces and funnel it to Rome. And the roads are occasionally lined with crosses, the empire's favorite brutal tool for silencing anyone who talks about a rival authority. A dangerous, deeply Jewish, politically charged declaration that a new world was about to collide with the present one. In that world, praying, "Your kingdom come," is not a quiet spiritual meditation. It is an act of high treason. It is an inherently political claim because two absolute regimes cannot successfully occupy the exact same space. If God's administration is arriving, Caesar's administration must fall. The structures of human power, the military occupation, the corrupt priesthood hoarding wealth in the temple, the crushing debt systems must be overturned. That is why Jesus immediately attaches the next phrase, "Your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven." In the biblical imagination, heaven is not primarily the afterlife. Heaven is the command center. It is the uncorrupted realm where God's will is executed instantly, without friction, without resistance. Earth is the rebellion. Earth is the compromised zone. This prayer is a demand for integration. It is a community standing in the middle of a bruised, militarized world, pointing to the uncorrupted reality of God's space and asking for the two realms to merge. What happens when you strip away 2,000 years of stained glass and rote recitation? But praying for a cosmic regime change does not put food on the table today. Jesus knew that. He knew that if this community was going to survive the waiting period between the empire that was currently crushing them and the kingdom they were praying for, they had to eat. Which brings us to the strangest, most widely misunderstood word in the entire text. The prayer pivots. It moves from the cosmic to the dirt, from the vast machinery of empires falling to the immediate, desperate mechanics of human survival. The first three petitions were about God's honor, God's regime, and God's will. The final three are about us. "Give us this day our daily bread." We read that line right past a full refrigerator, so it lands softly. It sounds like a metaphor for general provision. But to understand what this sounded like in first-century Galilee, you have to feel the physical precariousness of that world. This was an agrarian society under severe engineered strain. The Roman tax system, combined with Herodian tribute and temple taxes, stripped away nearly half of what a peasant farmer produced. We are going to reconstruct this prayer line by line in the dust of first-century Galilee. If a harvest failed, you borrowed. If you couldn't pay, you lost your ancestral land and became a day laborer. You stood in the village marketplace in the gray light of dawn, waiting, hoping someone with wealth would hire you to pull weeds or haul stone. If you were chosen, you earned roughly 1 denarius, just enough coin to buy a day's worth of crushed grain and dried fish. If you were not chosen, your children simply did not eat that night. That is the economic knife edge Jesus is speaking into. But the English phrase daily bread hides a genuine historical mystery. The Greek word Matthew and Luke use here is epiousios, and it is a ghost. In all of ancient Greek literature, across centuries of philosophy, poetry, military records, and merchant receipts, this word does not appear anywhere else. It seems to have been coined specifically by the early Christian community to translate an Aramaic phrase Jesus used. Early church scholars like Origen stared at the word and realized it was a compound. Epi meaning upon or for, and ousia meaning substance or being, or connected to the verb ienai meaning to come.